Hey, soccer fans, welcome back to another episode of the Feed the Fire podcast. It is the new year. It is 2025. Happy New Year. Welcome to the first episode of our third season doing the show, about the 137th episode of the Feed the Fire podcast. I appreciate everyone who has listened, sponsored, supported, emailed, and really helped to grow the show over the last few years. What started in 2023 as kind of a creative outlet for me for some soccer talk grew into what I will call a legitimate podcast with sponsors, a new hosting platform at Believe, getting to meet listeners at games, adding to the Chicago Fire and MLS communities, and as always, fulfilling our mission to grow the sport and grow the game through conversation. Looking ahead to 2025, we got some new graphics and sound. I hope you like a little bit more of that funky upbeat intro there. We're lining up some guests from throughout the Fire community and other MLS clubs. And we're looking to expand the business side of things here at Feed the Fire and Glasshouse Soccer as well. Hopefully going to get some merchandise in the works, as well as setting up ways people can donate and help support the show that way. Speaking of adding to the communities, one of our regular listeners and friend of the show, Ryan, created a Discord for fans and listeners of the show. Go ahead and search for that on Discord. I will tweet out the link and put it on Facebook as well. So make sure you check that out if you guys want to continue the conversation with each other off air. Also, I appreciate everyone who has left comments on the Spotify channel. I really do appreciate you interacting that way. However, now that I've switched hosting services, I'm not able to log back in to the creator side of things on Spotify and respond to all your comments. So please don't think I'm ignoring you. I do appreciate, but if you do want to have some interaction, please leave comments on YouTube. I can reply to those, or you can email me, glasshousesoccer@gmail.com, or comment and reply on Facebook and Twitter to the posts about the show. Now, with that all out of the way, with 2025 in full swing, even though it's only the second day of the year, I still think it's full swing. I had to get up and go to work today. I had to take care of the kids. I had to do a lot of stuff. The new year is in full swing, so let's get the show into full swing mode with some Chicago Fire transfer news. First and foremost, no, it's not that big incoming designated player signing. It is a little bit more house cleaning for the new year here. The Chicago Fire have transferred center back Tobias Salquist. And with some of the new year graphics here, we switched over to StreamYard, so I can actually share this a little bit here with you and bring this up as we look to, nope, that's the transfer tracker. I'll figure that out at some point. But here, let me read to you the press release. There we go. We got it up here. The press release from the Chicago Fire. Chicago Fire FC today, Thursday, January 2nd, announced that it has agreed to transfer defender Tobias Salquist to FC Nordsjaelland of the Danish Superliga. The move clears an international slot and a senior roster spot for the Fire. Additional terms of the transfer were not disclosed. We'd like to thank Tobias for his contributions to the Fire. Following discussions with him and his representatives, we agreed that a return to Europe would be best for both the player and the club. We wish Tobias and his family all the best for the future, said head coach and director of football Gregg Berhalter. Now, Salquist, who's only 29 years old, still relatively young, maybe in his prime for a center back, joined the Fire back on January 14th of last year from Danish club Silkeborg, where he had been there for 3 years. He is a Danish native, 14 regular season MLS appearances, including 10 starts, 1 assist, and 2 Leagues Cup starts this year. Prior to his time in Chicago, Salquist joined from Silkeborg from FC Midtjylland as a U17 player, and also spent time in Belgium and Norway. So Salquist returns back home to his home country, playing back in the Danish Superliga. Now, when he played here in MLS, he looked outmatched against MLS attackers. He was typically a step late, had difficult time on the ball, playing out of the back, especially with the presses that a lot of these opposing teams would use against him. He just never looked comfortable. I saw someone on social media call him the own goal machine. And yeah, he was responsible for a couple and responsible for some offensive players blowing right by him, leading 2 goals. But I think the Fire saw him as a backup center back. They had Turan, they had Chihos, they could use Pineda, They could use Salquist in a pinch, or not Salquist. They could use Suke in a pinch. So I think they saw him. They had Olmsberg. They saw Salquist as a backup center back that they wanted to develop and probably end up as the starter either in 2025 or 2026, depending on when Chihos left and when they ever transferred Turan. However, the scouting did not work out. He, like we said, was constantly step behind the play. And this was another roster building move for the Fire to open up another international roster spot. And it's been reported, even though we don't know the exact transfer fee, it's been reported that it was $300,000. And this was re-reported by Alex Calabrese over at Men in Red 97 Media. So make sure you check him out. He's got full press credentials and he's reporting everything for us here. But he's reported that, $300,000 transfer fee that the club paid, considering that Salquist made $400,000 base salary this season. The Fire took a little bit of a loss on it, but to open up the international roster spot to kind of do right by Salquist, to send him back home, as well as kind of clean house a little bit here for Gregg Berhalter, I think they were okay eating that little bit of loss there. But reflecting on Salquist's tenure, he was a guy that a lot of fans wanted to do well and wanted to succeed, but he just simply couldn't cut it in MLS, especially on a team that had a lame duck coaching staff that wasn't really interested or had the know-how to develop him as a center back or to make the tactical adjustments to his strengths while he played. We also need to recognize that he had a terrible injury. He missed a lot of time with the Fire due to injury, and coming back from any injury is difficult, but for a center back to come back from a knee injury, when you're cutting, when you're pivoting, when you're tracking defensive players, when you're forward and back, it's really, really difficult. And so he just never got back, I think, to 100% of his quickness, his speed, his cutting, a lot of those off the ball movements that he needed to have. So yes, I don't think he would have been a great player in Major League Soccer, but he definitely was never going to show what he could be in MLS because of this injury. So I hope he gets back home, gets into a comfortable setting, and can rehab and get back to 100%. I'll also remember him a little bit for his off the field moments, specifically one after the League's Cup match against Toluca. I was at that match with some family of mine. My stepfather-in-law, his family is from Denmark, and they were visiting and attended the match with us. So after the final whistle, all the kids were gathered around the tunnel, yelling in Spanish for all their favorite players. Here is one of my stepfather-in-law's kind of extended nephews, high school age, starts yelling to Salquist in Danish. And you should have seen the faces on all the kids and adults, and even a couple of the players, like, what is this kid speaking? But it definitely caught Salquist's attention. He came over, talked to my cousin, and then invited to meet him after the match just outside of the stadium. They got to hang out in the parking lot, talk to him a little bit, share some stories, take pictures, and he got Salquist's jersey from that match. So I'm going to remember Salquist as that guy who took that extra time for a fan from his home country to go see him and make that a special memory. But as far as his play on the field, just not up to snuff. We wish him well. But now the Fire have even less depth along that back line that they are going to need to quickly fill in before the season starts. Their first preseason match is 1 month from today out in Coachella. So that is going to be something to keep an eye on. I expect to see a number of transfers in from the Chicago Fire front office, now led by Gregg Berhalter. Hopefully they can fill out this roster in time. Now, the next next big thing going on in Major League Soccer, this is non-Fire news here. The Philadelphia Union have a new coach. As we know, they transferred out. They let go of Jim Curtin, their long tenured coach, and now they have their new manager, Bradley Carnell. I mean, my first thought was, okay, great. I'm glad he's coaching another team in the East. This should be a couple of wins for the Fire as he tries to figure out what he's doing over there. But as you may recall, in 2023, Carnell led St. Louis to the Western Conference #1 seed in the MLS Cup playoffs, set several expansion team records, and then fell on his face this season in 2024 and got fired. So I think that his success was in large part a product of St. Louis bringing him in and putting a roster together a year before they played their first game. So he essentially had a free year of training and development without having to play games and worry about injuries and players in and out and all this stuff. They just built their roster and started training. So I think that really helped him, as well as, nobody had tape on how he liked to coach. 2024, completely different story. You got expectations. Other teams have scouting reports on you and your players. Other teams aren't giving away goals like they did at the beginning of 2023. Go find it. I'm sure there's a clip of like the 7 back passes that other teams played right to St. Louis players that led to goals and led to them out to like a 5-game win streak to start the season, something ridiculous like that. So you take all that stuff away, Carnell really didn't have the coaching chops this past season. So he was let go in St. Louis, and now he is found again in Philadelphia. And a lot of people have said, yeah, this is kind of typical. It's Ernst Tanner. They knew him. They both played at Red Bull. They know the Red Bull system, and that's going to be how they're going to play going forward, very similar to that Red Bull style of high pressing, high intensity play. Outside of St. Louis, Carnell was an interim coach with the New York Red Bulls, bringing them to their 11th straight postseason and had a 6-win, 3-loss, 5-draw record when he had that interim time at Red Bulls. But he has a long playing and coaching career prior to MLS as well. Now, the reactions to Carnell's hiring, at least in the group of independent MLS content creators that I'm a part of, our little soccer group chat, the reactions were, I would say, mixed to opposed to this hire. There have been reactions that GM Ernst Tanner just wanted a yes man, which is what they got in Carnell. We know that Jim Curtin and Ernst Tanner definitely did not agree on how they wanted to build rosters versus how Curtin wanted to play. The reactions were also that Carnell will be Jim Curtin tactically, but will rely more on academy players, which is what the ownership wants. And you can read that as the ownership does not want to pay for a lot of players, that they want to be able to rely on their academy and then sell and use it as a money-making kind of a system instead of bringing in big-name DPs to help push you over the top for some trophies. And also, the big note that everyone is kind of saying is that, and I agree with this, that the way Ernst Tanner let go of Jim Curtin, surprising everyone, and just as soon as he got clearance from ownership to do it, he went out and did it. This whole Philadelphia Union club is now Ernst Tanner's responsibility, and any shortcomings will fall squarely on his shoulders. If he handpicked Carnell to coach the first team and run the first team a certain way. They have made moves in the MLS Next Pro team, their second team. So I think it was their one of the former assistants on the first team is now going to be running MLS Next Pro Club. So they're very deliberately moving pieces around from a coaching standpoint to play a certain way, to run their club a certain way. And if it does not succeed, then the first person let go should be and probably will be GM Ernst Tanner. But here is what Ernst Tanner said about the hiring of Bradley Carnell. Quote, Bradley has the attributes we were looking for in a manager and the experience needed as we commit to getting back to our identity as a team. With knowledge of both MLS and international markets, he is tactically astute and aligned with our sporting strategy. I'm going to interrupt the quote right there and say, commit to getting back to our identity as a team. Wow. If that wasn't a direct shot at Jim Curtin, I don't know what is. He finishes his quote saying, Carnell's approach emphasizes a high-press style of play while organizing a structured defense. Additionally, he shares the club's vision for developing players. We're confident he will bring a clear sporting philosophy that elevates the team and delivers a competitive season. We look forward to welcoming him to Philadelphia. End quote. And again, if Philly wanted to hire Carnell as a Fire fan, I'm happy about it, and hopefully that's 2 more wins. To really think about that last part of the quote, though, he shares the club's vision for developing players. That seems like another veiled shot at Jim Curtin, and I really don't think Jim Curtin didn't want to develop players, but Jim Curtin didn't want the core or the stars of his team to be homegrowns coming up. He wanted to compete with the top clubs in MLS. And I think he recognized if Philly is going to compete against Inter Miami, if Philly is going to compete against Cincinnati and Columbus in the Eastern Conference, and to a certain extent, Red Bulls and New York City, then you're going to need to sign a designated player or two or three for somewhere between $4 and $8 million on the low end, right? Messi, $20 million signing. Other DPs that LAFC signed between 2 and 4 up to $6 million. We've seen Chicago Fire drop $10 million on Hugo Kuipers. So, the spending wasn't there in Jim Curtin's mind to really get these highly talented players. And that's not a knock on the Philadelphia Union system by any means. They are producing some very, very good MLS players, some very, very good mid-tier European players. We've seen the transfers, we've seen the Aaronsons, we've seen McKenzie, right? And they are just not willing as an ownership group to spend multi-million-dollar transfer fees to bring in high-end goal-scoring talent. So that is going to be something to look out for in Philly, that if Carnell can't find attacking talent and goal-scoring talent like some of these other teams are bringing in free agency, if his tune changes, if he starts losing games and the pressure is on him even further. All right, let's move into now the transfer tracker portion of the show. Let's bring this up on the big screen here. For those of you watching on YouTube, let's take a look at some of the notable transfers from around Major League Soccer. And right now we see the first headline, Chicago Fire transfer Tobias Salquist. Also looking down the transfer headlines, the Revs transfer Esmir Berhalter to PSV Eindhoven. So that's a great move for their young striker. They also signed winger Luis Diaz, so bolstering their offensive attack again. New York City, this is a big one. NYCFC loaned James Sands to FC St. Pauli over in the Bundesliga. So they are losing one of their stalwarts. We'll see how New York City comes into the 2025 season as far as a roster goes. LAFC let go of Ilie Sanchez, and he finds a home with Austin FC. So bringing some veteran experience into the Austin lineup there. DC United signed defender Derek Dodson away from Minnesota United. So one of the other big names in MLS here, Fafa Picault goes to Inter Miami from the Vancouver Whitecaps. So he is probably going to have a little bit of a rejuvenation getting down to some more warmer weather, but I'll tell you, that man does not age, and it'll be great to see him continue his play in MLS. The Quakes acquire goalkeeper Earl Edwards Jr. from the Revs. FC Dallas acquire defender and U.S. international Shaq Moore from Nashville. San Diego FC, the expansion club, signed goalkeeper Pablo Cisniega. We have talked about on this show how Gaston Jimenez and the Chicago Fire have mutually parted ways, and he is back down to Argentina to play there. One of the other notable MLS names here, LAFC signed Jeremy Ebobisse. So those are some of the big transfers that have taken place over the last week or so. So if you were out celebrating with family, you may have missed some of those headlines. Also, not to mention former Chicago Fire winger Ariel Lassiter has signed with the Portland Timbers as a free agent. The Fire did not renegotiate or negotiate a new contract with him. I would have liked to see him back just to see what he could actually do, because he played so few games with the Chicago Fire. But if we're cleaning house here. That's the theme. We're cleaning house. So there has been a lot more transfers that have gone on that we've talked about. Make sure you go to MLSsoccer.com, find the transfer tracker, and keep yourself up to date with everything in between our shows here. But with that, Fire fans, I want to thank you all for tuning again this week. Make sure that you get your 2025 off to a great start. I hope everyone's getting back into a bit of a routine. As all the jokes go, that week between Christmas and New Year's just really doesn't seem to exist within time as we know it. But it is there. It has been piling up the emails and assignments, and now we're all back to work digging through it. I wish you all the best as I dig out of all my work too. And as always, let's go Fire.